Hello and welcome everyone. I just want to say we are finally here. It's been a long time coming and we are finally here. Yes. So it's good to be deep in the conversation, our analysis on issues and policies and politics drawn from conversation. So, the Friday column on our page of the leadership newspaper, and today's conversation is hot, hot, hot. Everybody has been addressing the elephant in the room. We are going to be discussing this elephant in a different type of way. Good evening.
Welcome, Azuka.
Welcome to you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you are a very, very interesting writer. You're one who chooses to always address the issues as it is. And the conversation today is on the fuel subsidy, the removal of the fuel subsidy.
Right.
So I read your piece a few days ago, and my first reaction was, hey, he has started. But I must say, everybody else looks like they removed the subsidy except you. So I want to know.
Interesting. Thank you once again, Azuka, for having me on this show, and it's really a pleasure for me to be here. Yes, you're absolutely correct. It's a hot button topic, isn't it? The removal or formal announcement of the removal of petrol subsidy. But keep in mind that when the petroleum PIA, the Petroleum Act, the Petroleum Industry Act, came into effect in February 2022. That was officially when subsidy died. It became illegal after February, as a matter of fact, for the government to continue to subsidize petrol. So yes, it's long in coming, but well, the government chose in its own wisdom at that time. Of course, I'm talking about the government of Buhari, to continue in spite of the fact that there was no legal basis for it to continue. It just chose to find ways and means to keep the subsidy going. But it was just, it was long overdue. Over 1 year, 1 year over the bar, actually. So what President Bola Tinubu did on the 29th of May, when he made a formal announcement, was calling into effect what had actually been in existence.
I think it's not just about the calling into effect, it was how it was called. Because a lot of Nigerians had been anticipating the removal of the subsidy for, like you said, close to a year. And the fact that it was in his inaugural speech. And for peace, you did say that almost every major contender for the office of the president did say that they were going to take out subsidy. But Nigerians were hoping that there was going to be a contingency plan, like a palliative, you know.
Well,
the word palliative.
Yes, this word palliative, it's become part of our lexicon for this sort of conversation. But keep in mind that back in between 2009 and 2011, actually, I remember then that President Jonathan's government, when petrol price was increased from 65 to 120 naira, as it was at that time, there was also this subsidy matter also came up, and I remember the government at that time said the differential would be used to use your phrase, palliatives.
Yeah.
And according to Reuters, that palliative came to something like $6.8 billion. So when the decision to call to remove subsidy was finally announced in January, people asked the very pertinent question at that time: what happened to the palliative? What happened to the money that had been set aside for the palliative? And that was, of course, what led to the riots, and then the government had to Occupy Nigeria, and the government had to sort of reverse the decision. So, and of course, you also remember what happened during the COVID lockdown and how so-called palliatives. So, I am very uncomfortable with this so-called palliative thing. The point is that, as at the time the announcement was made on the 29th of May 2023, that, to use the phrase that President Bola Tinubu used, that subsidy was gone. Subsidy was indeed gone, and the country was just cooled off. The country is just not able to afford. There's no money to pay for it.
Yeah.
You understand? So I've had this discussion about how he did it. As far as the Petroleum Industry Act was concerned, from the time that act came into effect, it became illegal. So I don't know the how. I really don't quite get the question about the how.
Well, he announced it, so he's the bad guy.
Well, it is what it is, but also keep in mind, like you also said, that at least 3 of the major contestants in the last election said that they were going to remove petroleum subsidy, petrol subsidy, if they were elected. And I remember the Labour Party's candidate Peter Obi calling petrol subsidy organized crime. So and Bola Tinubu said he was very categorical about what he said he was going to do, wasn't he? He said clearly that that he was going to remove it, and that you can strike from today till thy kingdom come. He was going to win it, and then even said provocatingly that he was, that he was going to remove it. I was still going to win the election. I mean, he said that. So, I mean, politicians are politicians, but I think that for the first time in a long while, we are seeing in this country someone who says, "Look, this is what I am going to do." I am not denying the fact that the impact is quite. It's going to have a very, the impact we're all feeling. The impact we are feeling, the pain, but I don't see how it's a problem that he said he was going to do something and he hit the ground, keeping his word.
Hit the ground running.
Yes, well, if you choose to use that phrase, but exactly that was what he did.
Yeah.
So I don't see how that really, I honestly don't see how that's a problem. But then, of course, the impact is a matter that I think that we need to have a bit of conversation around.
Yeah, and for me, I think one of the major issues here is that, like I said, he has become the bad guy. Yes. Even if the Buhari's administration kept on hinting, we're going to take out subsidy, and then the petroleum market has fuel scarcity, the difference in prices across different parts of the country. But now the subsidy is gone, what can Nigerians do?
Okay, now, so let me just provide a bit of context, if I may, before I deal with that question. I hope I do that as quickly as possible. So between 2006 and 2022, subsidy in 2006 for petrol was something like 257 billion naira. That was how much the government was in 2006. But as the end of 2022, it had gone to about 4.4 trillion. From 256 to 57 to 4.4 trillion. That's huge. Yes. That's huge. And again, as we have seen, because of the fluctuation in prices, it's just not sustainable, and the government does not have the money to keep doing that. But as to the question of how should Nigerians proceed? Well, I am hoping that what has happened will, within the shortest possible time, hopefully, deal with inefficiencies in the market. It's not going to be easy. I was sharing with some friends that instead of people putting out their fuel guzzlers on the road, people who have smaller, more efficient cars.
I just realized that Nigerians don't have fuel efficient cars.
That I think is one of the things that will need to be addressed. That is one of the things that will need to be addressed. People would have to, or also what happens in other parts of the country. And I'm not talking now about people who have cars, because the argument can also arise: why are you assuming that all Nigerians have cars? That's a legitimate question. I think that car sharing or carpooling can also be another option for people who everyone does not have to put their cars on the road. And so that carpooling or car sharing can also be another option. But I think that one thing that the government could also do as quickly as possible to alleviate the impact of the announcement would be to look at sectors that are mostly impacted, prioritize sectors that are mostly impacted. And my sense is that transportation and small-scale businesses are some of those critical sectors. So I think it's where the government will have to, as quickly as possible, make some sort of strategic intervention, not in the sense of providing it, but seeing how it is possible to provide, make it easier for people who are most impacted to manage in this very critical period.
Okay. And a lot of Nigerians have been calling out the NLC, TUC. I think I read a few hours ago about the maritime workers ready to embark on the strike.
Yes.
I think I'm going to be the bad guy and say this. A lot of Nigerians feel like the NLC has not done enough for them. They feel like they should have, instituted a strike action immediately. Also, some people are a lot more. Lots of people say that the last administration had paid or planned to continue subsidy for the first 6 months of the year. This is June. Lots of people feel like they could have fed Nigerians before taking out the subsidy. And I'd like to know, what do you think about this issue? As an ordinary Nigerian, it's going to be really affected. Take Abuja, for example. We do not have a proper organized transport system here in Abuja. And that's a problem. A lot of people feel like the government just took something off and did not replace it. And what is the assurance that this subsidy that you have taken, you said you're not going to subsidize anymore? What are you going to replace it with? A lot of Nigerians feel like this subsidy is the only thing that the government has done for Nigerians.
Yes, but Azuka, keep in mind that you cannot remove what did not exist. What did not exist cannot be removed.
That conversation again.
But it's a fact. It's how be it a painful fact, but that is exactly what it is. Nigerians, unfortunately, are used to being lied to. People promising to do something, and we have had, as we said, governments, over the years kicking the can down the road, and so somebody just had to say, well, enough is enough. But as I said, it does not therefore mean that I believe, for example, that the various agencies of government that are responsible for communicating what has happened have to step up, to the plate and take greater responsibility. Because sometimes we have a proverb in our place that sorry does not cure a wound, but it sort of befits it. So I am hoping that there will be persons who can step forward and try to explain to Nigerians exactly why this very difficult decision had to be taken. And as I said, also prioritize areas of intervention, whether it's in small and medium scale businesses, which would mean the people buying petrol to do, hairdressers and the vulcanizer and all of those such persons who use small quantity of petrol on a regular basis just to keep their businesses going, or whether it would mean intervening in areas like agriculture through an organized, some sort of organized system, or also but keep in mind also, because each time we talk about, each time we have had this debate about, people talk about Abuja and they talk about Lagos. Someone was just telling me before we came into the studio that in some parts of the country, specifically mentioned in the East, that as of December last year, a liter of petrol was selling at 400 naira.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but we always think of this in terms of, because we have the voice, we always think about this, about how it affects. Some people have been bearing the brunt for quite a while.
In fact, I hear that in some places in the north, the subsidy removal is a relief, because I hear they buy petrol for as much as
do you get the point? So that really, it does not mean then, therefore, that the government is one of the principal responsibilities of government, I'm sure, is to make life bearable for people as possible. But sometimes in getting to that point, some very hard and difficult decisions have to be made.
Okay. Well, if there's a decision that I know is that we're going to be here next week, Friday, again, for another deepening conversation. Yeah. Like I said earlier, it's been a long time coming. And hopefully we get to give you weekly doses of the conversation. Yeah. So you can follow on social media, all socials. It's at Azu Ishiekwene. I am Azuka, and this is
Azu Ishiekwene.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.